The old Africa has disappeared. Untouched jungles, huge herds of wild game, high adventure, the happy hunting grounds. Those are just dreams of the past. Today there's a new Africa, modern and ambitious. The old Africa died amidst the massacres and devastations which we've filmed. But revolutions, even for the better, are seldom pretty. America was built over the bones of thousands of pioneers and revolutionary soldiers, hundreds of thousands of Indians, and millions of bison. The new Africa emerges over the graves of thousands of whites and Arabs, and millions of blacks, and over those bleak boneyards that once were the game reserves. What the camera sees, it films pitilessly, without sympathy, without taking sides. Judging is for you to do later. This film only says farewell to the old Africa and gives to the world the picture of its agony. Nairobi, December 12, 1963. With cries of Uhuru, East Africa celebrates its independence. Uhuru is a new word. It means freedom. The colonialist regiments withdraw, and the church accepts custody of these souvenirs of an embarrassing past. Politics is new to Africa, too. A new problem for a new era. The symbol of the most progressive party, the rooster, is plucked by the nationalists. There are other new words like communist, fascist, liberal, radical. However, in the new spirit of Uhuru, everyone has the right to speak his own piece. There's a lot to fight about. Yet everyone agrees with Jomo Kenyatta, accused of being the mastermind behind the Mau Mau, but beloved as the incarnation of Uhuru. I like the English, he once said, in England. The whites must go. Africa is for Africans. However, a few months later, he himself will be the one to uphold the rights of the white people who were courageous enough to remain in Kenya. he will become one of the best protectors they have. The first African armies parade into history. And the English regiments parade out. Sir Richard Turnbull, ex-governor of Tanganyika, leaves Dar es Salaam. In the garden, his askaris come to say goodbye. The British leave, the gardens of Government House are open to black rulers for the first time. A new era, a great change. But somehow, in the little human ways, there's really little difference.
Well, Mr. Nyerere, thanks a lot for everything. It's been a very nice day. Well, very weather. Goodbye, Madam Nyerere. See you again. And you too. Bye-bye. I say, have you by any chance seen my wife? Most embarrassing. Most embarrassing.
Politely, with great ceremony, the last governor of the British Empire leaves Tanganyika. But the elegant cordiality reeks of strain. The guest has overstayed his welcome. Here, the screaming sirens and booming cannon are no more impressive than the irritating racket of toy guns. For years, Africa asked Europe to leave, but Europe refused. Then Europe called herself Africa's nursemaid. But Africa grew up too fast and too troublesome. So now, suddenly, Europe abandons her so-called baby just when it needs her the most. Now the Africans stage their party, a well-organized, spontaneous demonstration, well run by the police, against African countries still controlled by whites. Portuguese colonialist eggs go first. Then South African beer. It's not as effective as the Boston Tea Party, but the message is almost the same. Africa's free, but still black. Whites made Africa ashamed to be black. Some call blacks the devil's creation. Now, to wipe away that shame, the new Africa creates its own racism, and the devil changes his color. These lessons are taught by government teachers. The white brain is smaller than the black brain. The white man knows this and is afraid. In America, blacks invented the biggest of all bonds, but they are still kept in big glass prisons, like slaves. Hannibal was the white man's master. He gave him the signs used for writing. Hannibal also gave him the wheel, which Hannibal had invented. But when he brought it to the white king, the king killed it and ate it. Because they want to become black, whites lie in the sun by the sea. The white woman is descended from the monkey, and her hair is as straight as a monkey. The white woman has flabby breasts, so she hides them in white bags. But it's a hard lesson to learn. Here at a state-run beauty contest, even Miss Uhuru hides her breasts in white bags.
Mr. Kenyatta, President of the Republic, who has graciously accepted to attend this ceremony, let us now proceed to the first historic election of Miss Uhuru.
Miss Uhuru wants to be as elegant as was her white master's wife. Would you mind floating up that?
And now the verdict of the jury. Miss Kula, Miss Uhuru, 1963.
Some wealthy Africans can really turn the tables on the past. Top government officials get rich on the profits of Uhuru. Then, for their black babies, they hire white nursemaids.
No, dear, you mustn't spit the seed. Use your hands. Yes. With a long white beard. Don't hurt me. Oh, Willie. Why? Pretty white darling.
Now the whites must trust to black hands the defense of their homes and families. Soldiers of the most famous white African regiment, the King's Rifles, hand over their guns. There are no ceremonies, no military honors. It's a matter of fact. Africa has emerged from her long dark ages. She lays down the spear and picks up the rifle. Africa picks up the whites' police clubs, too, and begins training a new force. In Kenya, it's urgently needed. The young nation's first independent elections have been scheduled, and excitement has reached a fever pitch. During this campaign, irresponsible politicians promised to hand over all the whites' property, houses, cars, lands, and livestock, unprepared for modern democracy but eager to claim their shares. As if they could buy them with their votes, Africans scramble to the polls. But all they get is an age-old lesson meted out with the same old clubs, landing on the same old heads. There's new license everywhere. The old laws are suspended, new ones not yet written. Now there's no one to protect the reserves from poachers and meat hunters, black and white. For those who want to rob Africa the most they can in the least possible time, this is the perfect moment. Africa offers a dozen different types of safari. One, called the 15-minute safari, is just right for the harried businessman. A helicopter picks him up on the roof of his hotel, flies him above all that difficult, dirty forest, then carefully sets him down in a nice, safe place. While he rests, the copter finds an elephant and drives it toward him. Easy. If you can hit the broadside of a barn, you can't lose. That rented gun is so powerful it could demolish a dinosaur. Hit him anywhere. Such artillery is bound to knock him down. Then you can finish the poor beast off. Point blank. Two minutes for a snapshot of the moment of triumph. And in a few hours, the great hunter can be back at the office, bragging about his heroics. Africans don't have airplanes or powerful rifles, but they've got their ancient know-how and their numbers. So they gang up 10,000 strong, surround an area almost as big as Rhode Island, then pull the noose tight.
Sector 13. Water shortage in Sector 16. And giraffe moving to Sector 2. 63 report hippopotami moved from Zone 9 to Zone 12. Zone 42 signals buffalo moving southeast and next to Majipatuli, where they have already...
In an old, abandoned farmhouse along the Zambezi River, isolated and lonely, are the headquarters of the Wildlife Society. Financed mostly by private English funds using radios and airplanes, the Society tries to keep informed on animal movements across a huge section of the continent. Its goal, to rescue as many animals as possible from poacher-infested areas and move them to better protected parks. For millenniums, Africa's animals wandered free, obeying only the laws of nature. But now man imposes a new kind of migration, the life of the refugee.
Your outside check.
This is Operation Crocodile, working in the mouth of the Ruuma River, which is crawling with poachers. To catch the crocs, harmless traps. Their positions, marked by balloons, are set out during low tide. In the last 6 months alone, poachers have killed over 20,000 crocodiles here. The Wildlife Society can't possibly compete. This operation will save only 82. These lucky ones are knocked out with huge injections of tranquilizer serum. When they wake up, they'll be 250 miles away and safe for the moment. The new Africa is populated with walking wounded, animals that poachers or hunters didn't quite finish off. So the Wildlife Society has taken on the role of the jungle's Red Cross. To treat a wounded elephant, veterinarians feed their patients pounds of tranquilizers and hope that will keep them cooperative. They make diagnoses, take temperatures, administer medicine, even maintain an animal blood bank.
Hold that tail up, won't you?
Where the hell is this damn thermometer gone to? Now, hold it, Bessie. There's a good girl.
The Game Scout helicopter is flying over the Tana River region. Some of the men run into the bush for cover. They are the ivory poachers, the bane of the African game reserves. In this area alone, which is no larger than a London suburb, they have slain 750 elephants. The poachers have grown in number, taking advantage of the crisis caused by the present political transition. The immense heritage of the African fauna is in danger. It has been suggested to call in the United Nations. The problem, however, could be solved if greater financial aid was supplied for the protection of the game by the ex-colonialist states. In the meanwhile, both black and white gamekeepers are doing the best they can to protect the countryside. Hidden deep in the forest, police discovered hundreds of caches of ivory. One modernized army of poachers used hand grenades to massacre 300 baby elephants, all slaughtered only for the tiny tufts of hair that tip to their tails, out of which they make baubles and bracelets that tourists buy for a few pennies each. In less than a year, the police here collected 82 tons of poached ivory. If you consider that this is only 1/5 of the annual poacher's bag, you begin to understand the magnitude of the slaughters. In one valley of the Semliki, police found drying in the sun 2,800 skins of poached zebras, leopards, gazelles, cheetahs, and lions. Once this was the richest reserve in the world. Now the game grows rarer and rarer. Now rotting carcasses poison the air, and the forest is shadowed by huge columns of acrid, greasy smoke, rising over the crackling flames of the animal funeral pyres. The Wildlife Society keeps on trying to protect a few of the living, trying to save some of the wounded, but it's a pathetic losing battle. The massacres continue unabated. Hundreds of animals are butchered every day.
Bird Patrol. Bird Patrol. John Faraday calling Flying Bird.
This is Flying Bird. Come in, Bird Patrol. Over.
Found baby zebra, a week old, near mother's body. Killed by poachers with poisonous arrows. Emergency operation needed. Recommend special food, B16. Acknowledge. Over.
Okay, Third Patrol. Message received. We shall take it.
All right, get cracking, will you? He's hungry.
Righto.
When modern elections ousted them from power because they're a small minority, the Watusi allied themselves with the Chinese communists, supposedly champions of the world's masses, and revolted against Rwanda's peaceful majority, the Bahutu. The revolution failed, and the Bahutus took the horrendous revenge. In the forest, gruesome evidence. 54 amputated Watusi hands. This month, January 1964, at least 20,000 Watusi have died. The Bahutus' revenge has been going on for years, but neither the UN nor any government, black, white, or yellow, has tried to stop the slaughter. The Kagera River carries away thousands of corpses. These Bahutu river folk feel no pity for the Watusi, but for them the Kagera is the source of life, their drinking water. They must keep it clean. They have worked like this for weeks of ghoulish fishing, carried out with reluctant diligence, yielding a grotesque harvest. exodus along the road to Uganda, the road to safety. When they ruled Rwanda, the Watusi were a rich and arrogant people, cruelly dominating the Bahutu. Now, owning only their cattle, the Watusi are poor refugees begging sanctuary. Landless, homeless, uncomprehending, a people who hardly exist. The great game reserves, huge sections of the continent transformed by the British into the world's most perfect natural sanctuaries. Here, the British game laws classified man as the most destructive of animals. Here, except for man, all the animals were sacred. Man could tiptoe along the boundaries, but he could not put one foot inside. Even then, dedicated wardens watched his every move and demanded absolute silence. Africa. This must have been the way it was millenniums ago, when man had not yet been created, when apes were the only creatures to walk on two legs. The same ancient silence, the sovereign harmony, the perfect, undisturbed divine balance, the natural paradise. This must have been the way it was in the Garden of Eden, just before man was thrown out. of February 25th, 1964. The national parks, which up to now have been inviolate, are profaned. It has been decided that there is no longer any place in the new economy for these immense, unproductive territories. Now the new African government put the parks to use. The game wardens, both black and white, have no choice but to comply with governmental orders and to organize the details of Operation Cropping, also known as the Animal Harvest. Here in Uganda, as of today, on every Friday, Operation Cropping will stock the local butcher shops with fresh meat. Now, in those sanctuaries where once it was sacrilegious even to whisper, rifles shatter the ancient silence.
I want to get that one.
March 25th, 1964, Murchison Falls National Park, Elephant Harvest. April 3rd, 1964, Queen Elizabeth National Park, Hippopotamus Harvest. But Africa wants it both ways. Meat on its tables and the myth of the animal paradise for the tourists. Wounded animals limping away from the harvest are destroyed immediately. Above all, the tourists mustn't know. even most tourists don't get to Africa, we'd like to offer our own snapshot of the famous animal sanctuaries. This is edition 1964, Slaughter Paradise number 1, the richest meat market in the world. Don't worry, down there in the water, a few hippos are still left for next Friday. Here's another souvenir snapshot. This one's a must for the latest, most up-to-date brochure for a trip through the animal paradise. That inviolate sanctuary of our planet's disappearing wildlife. That sacred shrine of nature where even whispering was forbidden. Because today your trip can be a lot more jolly. You can shout, scream, curse, and romp around to your heart's content. You won't disturb anyone. Man, the most destructive of animals, has already passed this way. You can follow his trail for miles and miles, right across the heart of Africa, an endless panorama of desolation and death. Sanctuary to enter another sanctuary, South Africa, the sanctuary of the whites. The break seemed sharp and clean. Here, order and luxury. Back there, turmoil and hunger. South Africa's whites claim that the break is absolute. To the cry of Africa for the Africans, the whites respond, this isn't Africa. And the change is so abrupt, the country so prosperous, that this could almost seem true. Without doubt, this last outpost has no bearing on any other part of Africa. But if it is not Africa, then what is it? If this is not the extreme point of the African continent, where and on what world map can it be found? A real country in an unreal situation. The promised land turned ephemeral. A land groaning under a troubled past, whose future is uncertain. A future which its white inhabitants, both male and female, forget on this beach in the well-being of the present. dances and heavy breaths offered to the glory of nature now exists only in legend and on film. Here they're shooting a sequence on the Zulus, the fierce warrior tribe that once almost took South Africa from the Boers.
Come on, more action!
But today's Zulu girls demand high union wages to strip off their nylons and dance their grandmother's dances. For them, the ancient rhythms of the tom-tom have long since disappeared. Today, during their work breaks, they pound out some very new variations. Some of the new governments not only encourage modern modesty, they impose it. Enthusiasm everywhere often leads to excess. We in Europe have witnessed worse things. In the Sudan, that great organ of the modern world, the Legion of Decency, distributes thousands of pairs of underpants, all the same size, to the wild tribes. These warriors, once so ferocious, now receive them meekly. Meekly they agree to care for their drawers, with all the respect due government property. Of all the things that need hiding in Africa, if this is not quite the most urgent, at least it's the beginning, and at least the Legion of Decency is satisfied. Never before has a warrior slipped on short. Never before has a lion climbed a tree. The fact is, times have changed. In the new Africa, the old kings are in disgrace. Take the ex-king of beasts. Today, his roar doesn't frighten anyone. Animals flee from poachers and hunters. The ex-aristocrat, ex-terror of the jungle, climbs trees to catch lizards. Poor king of the forest. His ex-reputation stalks him and makes his humiliation public. Tourists flock to see him. Where's the lion? There's the lion. What's the lion doing? All day long. They won't even give him a moment of privacy. Encouraged by his natural laziness, the lion has given up hunting. Why bother? Park wardens do his hunting for him. Not only that, they deliver the meat right to his doorstep, in places easily accessible to tourists, and far away from such unpicturesque truths as the Friday harvest. The ex-king of beasts has retired. Now he's just a weary old man on welfare who gets his daily exercise by irritably shooing away the birds. Dar es Salaam, January 1964. Another revolt has exploded, this time in Tanganyika. What began as a minor army protest over wages has turned into race war. Just as in Zanzibar, the ancient African hatred of Arabs has broken loose. Muslim blood flows freely everywhere, but especially in Bagamoyo, the port where long ago the Arabs used to round up the slaves before loading them onto slave ships. Already the mortuaries are full, and the cadavers overflow into the sun. Patiently, the vultures wait for the inspection to finish, so that they can begin their own. President Nyerere has gone into hiding. The police have disappeared, and mutinous army troops have taken over the city, but they make no effort to control the rioting crowds. Dar es Salaam has toppled into anarchy. For us, it is almost suicidal to travel through the streets. We are chased away, threatened, and insulted. We try to reach the Arab quarter, but everywhere, crowds hide from our cameras the bloody evidence of the massacre. On Ocean Road, a Muslim tries to escape a crowd of Africans by running out into the sea. When the crowd overtakes him, he is drowned. The Africans feel that the Arabs now exploit them as pitilessly as the whites used to. Because of this, they demolish Arab shops and houses. Dozens of Arabs have put to the wall. Someone has killed 3 mutineers, so now there must be a reprisal. But we're not welcome at the execution. They scream at us and threaten us with machine guns. When we stall to get some good shots, one of the soldiers loses his temper. One of us is cut by the flying glass, but there's no question of treatment. The mutineers jerk us out of our car and haul us to the wall. They're about to execute us when a rebel officer sees one of our passports and shouts, "Wait! These aren't white. They're Italian." Leopoldville, June 26, 1964. Moise Chombe, the exiled rebel whose secessionist Katanga government held off the United Nations troops for over 2 years, returns to the Congo. Almost as much of the country is controlled by communist-supported rebels as by the Western-supported government. But Chombe boasts that he can clean up the mess in just 3 months. Now he's no longer a villain. Now he's the Congo's savior. But mass enthusiasm is short-lived in these parts. In a few months, Chombe will again be defined as the enemy of his country and sent into exile. November 24th, 1964. 5 months after Chombe takes over Stanleyville, the rebels' capital is captured by American-transported Belgian paratroopers and by American-supplied white mercenaries. The city is littered with unburied, rotting corpses. Here in the Congo, these new atrocities have old roots. Half a century ago, the white colonials used to cut off the hands of the blacks who didn't work fast enough. During that period, so much killing and torture, were so cruelly and persistently practiced that the black population decreased from 20 million to 12. And now we reap what we have sown. The rebels' leaders told them that their arrows were more powerful than guns, that they were protected by a magic spell that turned bullets to water. Doped up on drugs, believing themselves invulnerable, they marched into a massacre. Now ants, flies, and the sun stripped their cadavers to skeletons. They're granted no honors, no graves. They died without knowing what they fought for, without knowing that the Congo had become a battlefield for the Cold War, in which they were just unimportant dupes. Guns at ready, Belgian paras and white mercenaries forced rebel prisoners to carry out this grisly cleanup. The rebels in Stanleyville killed 74 whites, trapped 80 children in their schoolhouse and burned them to death, and raped 4 white nurses. 12,000 black enemies of the revolution were tortured, killed, and often eaten. Dead flesh decaying in the equatorial heat. 9 nuns, 7 missionaries, and 4 white children were tied together with wire and shot in the mouths. Many of the whites' bodies had been slashed open at the stomachs so that the rebels could eat the liver. At Leopoldville Airport, American C-130 transport planes unload the survivors of the horrors of Stanleyville. Less than 24 hours ago, they were lined up under the muzzles of the rebels' machine guns. Then, 320 Belgian paratroopers floated down out of the sky, burst into the city, and put 7,000 rebels to flight. The rescue took only 10 minutes, but 74 whites are missing at roll call. The wounded were pulled out from under a pile of corpses that included the Americans Carlson and Rhine. 5 of these wounded, among them a raped woman, died later at Leopoldville Hospital. They wouldn't even have made it to the hospital, nor would the 1,000 other rescued whites have made it out of Stanleyville had it not been for the American planes. But without the American planes, neither would the Belgian paras have hooked up with the white mercenaries and captured Stanleyville for the Western-supported Congo government. 2 days later, knowing this and disregarding the mission of mercy, the Organization of African States accused the USA of unlawful interference in internal Congolese affairs.
Pull them out of here!
We met them one by one, the reasons why Chombe is so cocksure that he can clean up the Congo mess. His white mercenaries. They're the world's last soldiers of fortune, outdated relics of the past. They're outcasts from the modern world, which expelled them, or from which they fled. On the lam from an infamous past, pursuing a restless present, a burnt-out adventure, a dead fate. They're all ex-something, ex-anti-guerrilla fighters from French Algeria, British Malaysia, Borneo, or Kenya, ex-SS officers from Germany, ex-CIA pilots from Cuba, ex-farmers from Kenya, ex-residents of the Sudan, Egypt, Tanganyika, ex-students from South Africa and southern Rhodesia. Some follow a macabre ideal of glory and adventure. Some believe they're fighting a last-ditch battle against communism. Some are known as les affreux, the horrors, who just love war. 2 days ago, 15 of them tore Kisaka from the grasp of over 400 rebels. Tomorrow, 40 of them will try what the entire Congolese army couldn't achieve, the conquest of Buendi.
Alors d'accord sur tous les points.
Alors, si j'ai bien compris, le 54 arrivera à Buendi avec l'Otigny, s'il raffie aux marches. Hein.
Eh bien, moi, je vais contrôler les hommes et les bagnoles.
Moi, je m'en vais avec le 52 et je vous rejoindrai à Buendi le 24. Faites gaffe aux noirs et surtout n'oubliez pas les prisonniers. Nous aurons des renseignements. Une fois Buendi tombé, nous attaquerons immédiatement Beaufalais. Beaufalais, pas de problème, 300-400 noirs, tous drogués. Merde! Et bien entendu, les gars, sans oublier, sans besoin de se bouffer.
The attack on Buendi will use air power. Air power means these two 20-year-old American T-6s, rickety antiques held together by chewing gum and string. Their pilots are Tom O'Keefe and Somerset Wilson, ex-Rhodesians whose families were murdered by the Angolan rebels. They've rented their planes and themselves to Chombe for $500 a month in a life insurance policy. So far, they haven't been paid, and they haven't found an insurance company to underwrite the policy, but still they fly, with limping motors over rebel-infested jungles for free. Today, as they left, they signed the required forms in their usual way. Destination, hell. Reason for flight, personal business. October 22nd, 1964. The attack on Buendi.
Hey! Off the trucks and take cover! Off the trucks and take cover!
Hold your bar! All right, hold it!
For 3 months, these nuns and priests lived in a nightmare of fear. The rebels had been taught to strike at the white man through his god, the god of the white skin, the god responsible for the unending arrogance of his worshippers.
All right, against the wall. Hands up there. Over here. Right, let's see them. What are you, milady?
The victors have no sympathy for their prisoners. Today it's the rebels' turn to suffer. But tomorrow, when the mercenaries move on, other rebels will return. Then it will be someone else's turn. It's an endless cycle, a dance of death that's lasted 5 years. It's worse now because the Cold War has moved in. Black against white, east against west, black against black. No one ever wins. No one finally loses, except the dead. Under the swarming ants and flies and the pitiless sun, they rot together, black and white, with absolute biological equality. But, at least for the moment, to the winners go the spoils. At Buendi, the mercenaries discovered a rebel government strongbox. When they blew it open with a bazooka, they found 50 million Congolese francs. This fortune was not saved to finance the revolution. It was to finance Plan OK, according to which 3,000 rebel troops were to invade the USA. America is saved. The mercenaries take the folding money, and the Congolese soldiers get the small change. Like all such innocent dreams of grandeur, Plan OK is indefinitely postponed. Meanwhile, in reality, the soldiers get drunk over a victory as worthless as their plunder. Guests at a banquet where they get only the crumbs. For centuries, the Congo has been starving for bread. But today, these soldiers are rich in everything that's worthless. Formal tails for a black-tie dinner. Sun hats for a white man's safari. They can't take it with them, and they can't sell it. But at least they can dream. The right to plunder is granted for 24 hours. Time ran out 10 minutes ago. But how come if you could loot 10 minutes ago, you can't now?
Down.
A good Congolese soldier fighting for his country will never figure it out.
Thieving bastard. Call yourself a policeman, eh? You're worse than the others. Hey! Halt there!
He'll never figure out why the whites make such a fuss to find out who ate this fellow's liver. Or why you need a court to sentence this rebel who burned alive 27 children trapped in their school. Or why they've arrested those soldiers who raped those rebel bitches in their prison cells. Or why you need so many men and so many rifles to kill one little, unarmed rebel. When you need only one shot to kill one so much bigger and stronger.
Okay, take him out of here, put him against the wall and shoot him.
But in Africa, life explodes as powerfully as death. Here in South Africa, for every white baby, 5 blacks are born. Frightened, the whites have set up a system of complete racial segregation, apartheid. In their castle in the sky, they claim it can work. But in reality, it's an impossible, hysterical defense. And the longer it endures, the more it threatens to change the joyous smiles of the new generations into the grim lines of hate.